People are sleeping in there. They don't want a job. They don't want to go inside. This is where they like to live.
There is no lock on a sidewalk. No door, no deadbolt, nothing between a sleeping body and whatever comes down that block at 3 in the morning. Researchers who study rough sleeping keep landing on the same brutal number. In one 5-city study, 98% of people experiencing homelessness had been the victim of a violent attack at some point, and almost 3/4 of them within the last year alone. But the people actually living through that every night aren't just lying there hoping. They're running a system, and almost nobody outside that life has ever had to think about it. Picture the choice that starts every single night. Not where's the softest ground, where can I be seen? A doorway tucked back in shadow feels safer to the eye, out of the wind, out of sight. It's also exactly where someone can walk right up before you know they're there. People who've spent years on the street will tell you the opposite instinct is the one that actually keeps you alive.
Stay visible. Stay under a streetlight. Stay somewhere with foot traffic, a security camera, a spot a police patrol actually passes on its loop. Being seen is a form of protection that costs nothing and works while you're unconscious, which is the one state every other plan has to account for.
Right here we have a homeless encampment. There's beds right here. People are sleeping. We have umbrellas. This is what's happening in Mayor Mamdani's New York City.
Once the spot is picked, the next problem is everything you own. A backpack, maybe a shopping cart, maybe a single duffel bag, and inside it is the whole of a life. Identification, medication, the one dry pair of socks, a phone that's the only way anyone can reach you. People who've been through this long enough stop thinking of it as luggage. They think of it as the one thing standing between them and starting over from absolute zero.
So it gets threaded through a belt loop, or clipped to a wrist with a carabiner, or looped through an arm before sleep even starts. Because a bag that isn't physically attached to your body is a bag that can walk away while you're still breathing evenly on top of it. Clothing does double duty out here, in a way almost nobody with a locked door ever has to consider. Extra layers aren't just for the cold, though the cold is its own separate danger. Hypothermia can set in long before anyone notices, and people who've slept outside through a winter learn to watch for the small warning signs in each other. The slurred word, the sudden clumsiness, the person who stops shivering because their body has quietly given up trying. Shoes stay on. Some people sleep in everything they own at once, coat zipped, boots laced, because the 2 seconds it takes to stand up and defend yourself, or run, is the entire margin between a bad night and a very bad one. A jacket becomes a wall. Boots become the ability to get somewhere else, fast, the second the situation calls for it. Even a sleeping bag gets chosen with this in mind, something rated for genuinely brutal cold, if a person can get one, because the street doesn't care what the forecast said. Here's the part that actually explains the exhaustion you can see on so many faces sleeping rough. Real sleep, the deep kind, the kind that restores a person, requires a level of safety the street simply does not offer. So the body compromises. People describe sleeping in stages, an hour at a time, one ear working even when the rest of them is out, snapping fully awake at a footstep, a voice, a bottle rolling too close. It's called hypervigilance, and it's not a character trait. It's what a nervous system does automatically when the alternative to staying alert has, in the not-too-distant past, actually gotten someone hurt. This is where the buddy system stops being a nice idea and becomes actual infrastructure. 2 or 3 people who trust each other will split the night into shifts, the way a ship's crew stands watch. One person stays awake, watching the street, while the others get whatever depth of sleep the location allows. Encampments form for exactly this reason as much as for company. A cluster of tents isn't just community, it's a version of the same math that puts streetlights on the list of safest places to sleep. There is real safety in more eyes, even tired ones. But the system doesn't always hold. Someone comes down the block, and it's clear inside 2 seconds that this isn't a stranger passing through. Here's what people who've lived it describe. There's no time to think through options. The body already decided. Wake the person next to you without a word, just a hand on a shoulder. Get loud immediately, because attackers who prey on people sleeping outside are counting on nobody hearing anything at all. Noise draws attention, and attention is the one thing a person trying to rob or hurt someone in the dark cannot afford. Get vertical if you can. A person standing is a target that fights back. A person lying down is not, and sometimes it doesn't stop there. The same 5-city study that produced that 98% figure found something else just as brutal. Over a quarter of the people who'd been attacked said it had happened 4 or more times, not once, 4 or more. This isn't a single bad night that a person recovers from and moves past. For a meaningful share of people sleeping outside, it's a recurring event they have to build an actual system around, the same way anyone else might build a system around a chronic illness. Because, in a sense, that's exactly what it is. You'd think the fix is obvious. Get inside. A shelter has walls, staff, a locked front door, and none of the exposure a sidewalk has. And plenty of people do choose that option every single night. But here's the detail that surprises almost everyone who hasn't looked closely at this. Multiple studies of shelter safety keep turning up the same uncomfortable finding. A significant share of people who've spent time both on the street and in a shelter say the shelter is where they actually felt less safe, not more. Theft is common in a room full of strangers and shared space. Fights break out over bunks, over belongings, over nothing at all. One researcher who spent years studying this put it plainly. Some people would rather sleep exposed to the weather, in a spot they chose and control, than sleep locked in a building with 40 people they didn't choose and can't watch all at once. That's the reveal that actually explains the whole system this video just walked through. It was never really a choice between danger and safety. It was a choice between two different kinds of risk, and the street, at least, lets you pick your spot, watch your own back, and control the one variable a shelter takes away from you completely. None of this is the whole story of a hard night either. People who live this life will also tell you about the small things that get them through it. A stranger who shares a blanket without being asked. Someone who's learned to drop cayenne pepper into instant noodles because it makes a cheap meal actually warm you from the inside on a freezing night. A community that shows up to a drop-in session just to trade a wet blanket for a dry one. The threat is real, and so is the person 2 feet away who'll wake you up if something's wrong. Because out here, that's not a small kindness. It's the whole system working exactly the way it's supposed to. One woman who spent 17 years sleeping outside in Washington, D.C., before she finally got into stable housing, now spends her time helping other people get off the street. She's been direct about what she saw out there. The violence never stopped being real the entire time she lived it. And she says it's only gotten worse since, especially for women. She's also the reason a lot of newly homeless people in that city learn the streetlight rule, the buddy system, the bag looped through an arm, in their very first week outside, because someone who survived it took the time to pass it on. That's really what all of this comes down to. A lock on a door isn't a piece of hardware. It's a promise that you get to decide who comes near you while you're unconscious and can't defend that choice yourself. People sleeping outside don't get that promise from a manufacturer. They build it themselves, out of a streetlight, a shoulder tap, a bag looped through an arm, and someone else willing to stay awake so they can close their eyes. It's not the safety anyone would choose given an actual option. It's the safety 2,000 strangers' worth of trial and error has taught people how to build instead. So maybe the real question isn't how anyone survives a night like that. It's how many of the people walking past a sleeping figure on a bench tonight have any idea just how much work went into making that spot, that posture, that bag looped just so, look like nothing at all.